You got to be loving this start to the season for Duke. 8-0 after a big Thanksgiving Day win over Arkansas. Now a couple of challenging games are in the week ahead for the Blue Devils. First, a dance with the Florida Gators inside Cameron Indoor, and then a trip up to take on Michigan State. Let's get into it.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. So great to have you here with us today on Monday, December 1st, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we highlight the big Thanksgiving Day victory that Duke basketball had over the Arkansas Razorbacks. Get into a look at the game against Florida that the Blue Devils will have tomorrow night. And then at the end, we talk football. Duke with the win over Wake Forest. They finished the regular season with the 7-5 record overall, 6-2 in ACC play. But the biggest news, Duke football heading to the ACC Championship Game. Can't wait to talk about all of that and so much more with our guy Hugh Straine, who joins us here on the show today. We'll have him in just a moment. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the feed, leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Watch our show each and every day, daily on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate all the support that you guys give us here at Locked On Blue Devils. So without further ado, from Ball Durham, the aforementioned Hugh Straine back with me here. Hugh, I hope that you had a great Thanksgiving holiday. It's crazy looking at the calendar now. The month of December has arrived. Here we are, the end of 2025. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I hope you're doing well, too. Had a good holiday back at home. Hope you had the same crazy stuff going on with Duke athletics right now. So much to talk about. Pumped to get into it.
Yeah, man, the win over Arkansas, then like we said, just a chaotic weekend in the football world, both coaching search-wise for so many schools, and then figuring out who's playing in conference championship games, what the college football playoff looks like. So we'll get into that here in just a little bit. Duke, however, on the basketball side of things, earned a very impressive win over the Hogs in Chicago on Thanksgiving night as the Blue Devils improved to 8-0 on the season. They were led by another sensational performance from one Mr. Cameron Boozer. We got to start with him. He set the tone for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, if Cam Boozer hadn't really set himself as a National Player of the Year contender on a national scale, he just did against Arkansas. There's a good chance that game between Duke and Arkansas is the most watched college basketball game of the entire season. It was on Thanksgiving. It was nationally televised on CBS. Really, really great game all around. But yeah, Cam Boozer, he's getting so much better working in the paint, using his body. He's able to dribble the ball up in transition and facilitate really an entire offensive possession on his own. He is such a threat in transition now, which he wasn't really doing much early in the year. But 35 points on 18 shots to go along with 9 boards and 3 assists. And my biggest takeaway from his game altogether was that I've always said all season that I think his most important trait for Duke is his ability to pass at an elite level for a big. But what I think we saw against Arkansas is he can switch his priorities based off what the team needs in that certain game. Duke doesn't always need him to be a scorer. And against Arkansas, they did. When Darius Acuff went on a little bit of a run of his own in the second half in the guard play for Arkansas with him and Malik Thomas, just causing a ton of issues, it became a saga where practically every possession, it was just an early paint touch to Cam Boozer or get him the ball and let him operate on his own. John Calipari elected to never double Cam Boozer. So John Sird said to Cam, go make Trevin Brazil's night miserable. And that's exactly what he did. It was just an early paint touch. He got his way into the paint, took 11 free throws, albeit not very efficient, but it was fairly simple. And John Calipari made no adjustments, so Shire went back to it. But again, just another dominant performance, a season high for him, and really, really, really set himself apart on a national scale, I think, in a big-time moment.
Yeah, free throws continue to be the one thing that this whole Duke team as a whole will have to work on. But 13 of 18 from the floor is as efficient as it gets when you're looking at a guy who's such a high-volume player like Cam Boozer. It was so simple, like you said, when Duke needed a bucket, toss it into the big fella, and number 12 was going to go get it. I was over here looking for the stat that came out after the fact, talking about Cam Boozer of Duke basketball is the only Division I or NBA player in the last 30 seasons to have an 8-game span with 175-plus points, 75-plus rebounds, 25-plus assists, 10 or fewer turnovers, and an undefeated record. He just did that in the first 8 games of his career. Jeez, man. That's wild.
Yeah, I just did a piece on that for Ball Durham, actually. There's just so much to take away from that. No one in college or Division I or the NBA has done that, period, over the last 30 seasons. And Cameron Boozer did it to start his career. That just not really a thing that happens all that often. And
someone's got to let him know he's not supposed to do this. Like, it's supposed to take a little bit to get adjusted to the college game, not dominate right out of the gates. We love this.
Well, that's what we were saying on the pod in the exhibition when he was going for 20 games in his first college action ever. Like, it's just not, this isn't a thing that happens in college basketball when you're 18 years old. But for Cam Boozer, who's such an elite talent, you know, he's putting the nation on notice why he's being considered to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. I think he's been the best freshman in the country so far this season. A lot of that has to do with Darren Peterson being out for an extended period of time, but I think he's been the most productive. He's been the key piece on an 8-0 Duke team with some quality wins already. And with this next matchup coming up with Florida and then Michigan State next Saturday, some big-time stages that Cam Boozer is going to be on, along with the rest of this Duke team, to really, you know, cement themselves as a true national championship contender and a team that probably deserves to start being in the mix to being ranked number 1 in the country.
And as we'll talk about, the Florida Gators, they've got a lot of size in the front court. They've had some inefficient guard play so far to open up the year for the reigning national champs. But size in the front court is something that they do not lack. So there will be challenges present for Cameron Boozer, but he has surpassed every single challenge already that's been given to him so far to open up a college career. Just unbelievable stuff from him. The other guy to highlight from the game in Arkansas for Duke was Caleb Foster. 15 points for CFOS, a career high, 8 assists. I mean, when Duke needed momentum to kind of settle things down a little bit, Caleb Foster was there. He had a couple of bad turnovers that still remain an issue from time to time. But you got to recognize and praise Caleb Foster for what he did because, man, people have been hard on this guy when he hasn't been playing well. So let's do our service here, Hugh, to give him his flowers.
Yeah, I also did a piece on him the other day after the Arkansas game. I think he's turning into one of the best stories in college basketball. I don't think he gets enough credit for having a sophomore campaign where he came into the season as a top breakout candidate on a national scale. And it was just an utter disaster to the point where he wasn't just unproductive. For the back half of the regular season, he was practically out of the rotation for John.
He didn't play.
He practically didn't play, and then had some good performances in the NCAA tournament. But there's so few guys in today's era of college basketball who, after a season like that, would stay. I thought there was no chance in the world he stayed because why would he?
Yeah,
I assumed he'd be in the portal. Caden Boozer would be this team's starting point guard, but Caleb Foster stayed, and he's trusting the process, and it's really working out. I think him and Caden Boozer on the floor, you mentioned the turnover issues. I think when they're on the floor together, Caleb Foster actually flourishes as an off-ball guard as opposed to always having the ball in his hands because he can look for his shot more. But I think where he's thrived the most and how he stepped up for this Duke team in the most important way is his elite perimeter defense. He's been Duke's best perimeter defender by far, in my opinion. I've seen it twice now, once against Kansas and once against Arkansas, where Caleb Foster has come off the bench in the second half and completely shut down the opponent's lead guard. Against Kansas, it was Melvin Cancel Jr., who I think went on a 7-point or 8.80 run by himself to start to give Kansas momentum. Caleb Foster comes off the bench and completely shuts it down.
Yeah.
And did the same thing with Darius Acuff in the second half against Arkansas. He does not allow any penetration. He's so physical, and he's starting to make the right read and not really force anything on the offensive side of the ball. So he's just maturing so much. I've been so impressed. I'm so happy for him to see what he's doing. I'm hoping we see more time with Boozer and Foster on the floor together because that's where I think Foster can actually fill up the stat sheet. But he's been such a critical piece to this team, and I'm so excited for him and really, really excited to see where the season takes him.
Excited as well to see what Caleb Foster is able to do. It was the biggest minutes discrepancy that we've seen from the two guards. 33 minutes for Foster against Arkansas, just 8 minutes of play for Caden Boozer against the Hawks. So could that be a storyline worth monitoring and following as we get set for Duke's big test against Florida? All right, let's step aside. I want to talk a little bit more about the test that Duke's got coming up and in just the month of December in general. Stay tuned right here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week, it's the best time to jump in because the cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. I've given Omaha Steaks as a gift before, and the reaction from family is always the same. Total excitement when the box arrives, and even bigger smiles when everything hits the grill. Save big right now on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout, COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Omaha Steaks is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, forward we go here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson is my name, joined by Hugh Straine from Ball Durham, talking about the Duke win over Arkansas. They're now 8-0, and the Blue Devils get set for the reigning national champion Florida Gators. A lot of people thought this could have been a title game a season ago, but the Houston Cougars obviously had something different to say about that against Duke in the Final Four. So now we get the matchup. We're excited to see this one kind of play out. A big front court for Florida, but the guard play between Boogie Flynn, the Arkansas transfer, and Xavier Lee from Princeton, who Duke was in on, trying to recruit him out of the transfer portal. They have certainly had their struggles to open up the year. Xavier Lee specifically is shooting like 29% from the floor. I mean, it has been a real struggle. So maybe better off Duke didn't land his services as you make the big-time jump there from Princeton. But nonetheless, man, Hugh, I'm excited to see this game play out.
Yeah, when the ACC SEC Challenge released and it was going to be Duke versus Florida at Cameron, I thought this was going to be the game of the year throughout the entire season. I'm not really sure that's the case anymore. Florida's been a really difficult team to evaluate. They're 5-2 with losses to Arizona and TCU. They only have one win over a top 50 KenPom team. You mentioned it, JJ. The guard play has been not great from Boogie Flynn and Xavier Lee, obviously really early, but it's not looking like Xavier Lee is making that jump from the Ivy League all the way up to the SEC, and that's kind of the gamble you take with these mid-major stars is can they make that jump? Obviously, so much time for Lee to get going. He did have a breakout 20-point performance against Providence, but it just hasn't been great. But they do have the best front court in the entire country, in my opinion. And I think this is easily the biggest test for Cam Boozer and the entire front court. There's four bigs that are all athletic, and I think all four of them can really play on the floor at the same time with Ruben Chinyelu and Micah Handlockton, who are the two centers, and then Thomas Houck and Alex Condon. Alex Condon was an AP preseason All-American, and Thomas Houck has been on a tear throughout this season, averaging almost 20 points per game. Super athletic forwards in Condon and Houck. And then two dominant rim protectors in Chinyelu and Handlockton. They can mix and match a lot of the matchups with Duke. And this is one of the few teams where Duke doesn't overwhelm the opponent with size.
No doubt.
I think it's easily the biggest test for Duke this season, especially at home, just because of the way they match up. Florida's struggled, but they do have two dynamic guards who sure haven't been great, but a really big test for Boozer, Foster, Harris, those guys on the perimeter. And then even bigger test in the perimeter for a young Pat Gungba, for Malik Brown, and for Cameron Boozer especially, who's obviously going to be the center of attention. But what's going to be the key to the game is if Duke can have consistent offense outside of Cam Boozer, because obviously Florida is going to do whatever they can to take Cam Boozer out of the paint and keep him from being a scorer. And with the length they have, they can switch a lot, make Boozer's passing out of the post really difficult. So having a consistent second and third option outside of Boozer is going to be the key to the game.
We'll see how it goes for Duke against this Florida team, because the front court, as you mentioned, you just named four players. And let's also throw out there, we did not once mention Olivier Roux, who at 7'9" is the tallest player in the entire sport. He will not play. He's only been playing in kind of blowout type games for Florida here. But that's insane that you've got this level of front court, and you're not even mentioning the guy who's 7'9", the redshirt freshman there for the Florida Gators. They are huge. And Cameron Boozer, Patrick Gungba, Malik Brown, like you said, they got to be ready to go, man.
They do. And Florida hasn't been great offensively. Obviously, we just mentioned the mediocre guard play, but they have been pretty elite defensively. They're a top 10 defensive team at KenPom, according to adjusted defensive efficiency. So just getting in the paint is going to be an extremely difficult thing to do. We already know Duke is an elite outside shooting team. We just don't know how consistent they can be an elite outside shooting team. I think that's going to be a key to this game is can they make outside shots? Because getting in the paint, it's just going to be extremely difficult. John Shire is going to have to run a lot of creative action, try to free up the paint. And it's just going to be really difficult for Cameron Boozer to go out and have 20 and 10 when all of the attention is going to be stopping him. And there's just so much length to go around. I saw a lot on social media after the Duke win at Arkansas is in one game, you can have a game where just throw the ball to Cam Boozer, let him work in the post, have him get his 35 and you win the game. That is essentially what it was, but I thought it was taken as a bit of an overreaction because that isn't what Duke is, because it was Duke can't do this long term, who was their second option. I think Duke does have a lot of options. They just didn't need it on that night. It kept working. Calipari didn't make the adjustments, and Cameron Boozer wasn't double. Just let him go to work. But I think this is a big game for Isaiah Evans to really set himself up on a national stage.
Yep.
And the wings just need to be a little more aggressive offensively, because I think this is going to be the type of game where Cam Boozer really just has his life made difficult for him, and you can't just rely on 20 and 10 from him. I think he'll get his double-doubles probably in the cards because he's Cameron Boozer, and there's no reason to believe so far that he's not going to do it. But this is the exact type of opponent to take him away and force Duke to attack in a different way on the offensive side of the ball and then still be elite defensively. So just a really, really cool test for Duke, and I think we'll say a lot about where this team is right now.
Okay, let's talk Isaiah Evans then, because this is a name we've mentioned a few times here, and he's been kind of Duke's secondary option at times. There's been a big conversation as to who is Duke's second best player. Gongba has been awesome for the Blue Devils. There's been great games from Slim. There's also been games where the shot's just not falling from the outside. On the season right now, Isaiah Evans is shooting 35.2% from three-point range. So even that number could go up a little bit. There are several guys on the Duke team that right now have a better three-point shooting clip. Caleb Foster, by the way, one of those guys. Shout out C-Foss, right now shooting a just crazy 48% from three-point range. But let's get on track here. Isaiah Evans against Florida is going to be important here for Duke.
Yeah, he's going to have – he is Duke's second best player. I don't think that's in the conversation. Gungba's been awesome, but I also think Isaiah Evans is Duke's most important player long-term for this exact reason. In games when Cameron Boozer is probably going to have a really hard night, he's the guy that has to step up because he's not a veteran, but he's, for what this Duke team is, one of the veterans on this team, and he is the leader in the backcourt. It's on him. He's taken the threes at a high volume. He's shooting almost 7 a game. They're just not falling at a consistent clip, which is fine. There's been tons of action run for him, and we know how high his confidence is. It's going to start to fall at some point, but I think against a team like Florida where Duke has the edge defensively, it's a game where outside shots just have to fall, and a lot that's going to start with Isaiah Evans, but it's also going to fall on guys like Dame Sarr, Nick Hamenya. Darren Harris, I think, could be an X factor in this game. I think getting him extended minutes is a really good thing for Shire because he's been in these situations before. He's big, he's physical, he's got a super quick release, but there's going to be situations where Boozer's going to get the ball in the post and that paint's going to clog. And it's got to go out quickly. And obviously we know Cameron Boozer is going to do that. But catch and shoot situations are going to be really important for Duke on Tuesday night. Darren Harris might be the team's best catch and shooter. He catches the ball high, releases it so quick. There's going to be action run to get Isaiah Evans the ball more than there will be for Darren Harris. But it's got to start with Isaiah Evans. The shots just have to fall. But it also falls on guys like Dame Sarr and Hamenya and Darren Harris as well.
What do you got for us, Isaiah Evans? Duke fans, we're so curious. Played so well in the ACC SEC Challenge last year in the game against Auburn. That's when he hit 6 3-pointers in the first half and really helped Duke power their way to a win. Tyrese Proctor had several clutch baskets late, and we learned that Auburn ended up being a Final Four team in so many respects. Janai Broome was the runner-up in the National Player of the Year discussion, partly because Cooper Flagg had the great year that he had, and in that matchup, Duke did just such a great job defending against Janai Broome. So let's see kind of what this matchup looks like specifically. And remember, Hugh, the ACC SEC Challenge was very, very lopsided in favor of the Southeastern Conference. They had 14 teams make it to the NCAA tournament. They won 14 games in the matchup, 14-2 was the final score between the leagues, as only Duke and then Clemson knocking off Kentucky were the only teams to win.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made that last year's SEC was the greatest single-season college basketball conference of all time, setting the record for tournament bids. And last year's ACC was just an absolute, utter disaster. I don't think, it's pretty obvious at this point that this year's ACC is light years better than it was last year. I think there's potential to get 6 or 7 teams into the NCAA tournament, at the very least 4 or 5. But I think you just got to have a better showing. The SEC has been fairly lackluster against ranked opponents to begin the season. I don't have their record right in front of me, but it's fairly below 500 against ranked teams and against top 50 KenPom teams. But obviously we know how deep the SEC is. There's a lot of really, really good matchups. I can't wait for North Carolina, Kentucky. I think that's the game of the day. So many great games on Tuesday night, but a chance for the ACC to establish itself as a top college hoops conference again, because it didn't do it in football this year, but it's never been a football conference. So many marquee games on Tuesday night that I can't wait for. Seems like Darren Harris is going to play against UConn as well. So a loaded Tuesday. I think most are expecting
Darren
Duke
Peterson. Yeah.
Peterson, sorry. And but I think most are expecting Duke to handle Florida. But I think North Carolina, Kentucky is the game of the night. Super, super excited for Tuesday night and a chance for the ACC to really put itself back on a national scale.
Yeah, get back on course there for sure. So Florida and Duke, and then immediately after that on ESPN, that's going to lead into that North Carolina and Kentucky matchup. Other ones in the league on Tuesday: Tennessee, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Wake Forest, Texas A&M and Pitt, Georgia, Florida State, Miami, Ole Miss, Missouri, Notre Dame. And then Cal is playing against Utah. Cal is one of the teams in the ACC not in the event, as again, there are 18 ACC teams compared to 16, so a couple of teams are left out. And then notable matchups for you on Wednesday night of the event: NC State at Auburn. That is the top 25 showdown, another top 25 showdown between Louisville and Arkansas. So several big games coming your way. Also, a lot of big things happening in the football world right now, because the Duke Blue Devils are getting set to head to the ACC Championship Game. Unbelievable what's been set up. Let's get into it in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track prices in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Also, great ticket ideas and options for your holiday gift giving for friends, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy shows, you name it, all over at Game Time. So go ahead, take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Game Time, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, my buddy Hugh Straine from Ball Durham is here talking all things Duke athletics. How about the football team? Very impressive victory over Wake Forest to close out the year at 7-5, and yet that's just not the most significant thing that transpired on Saturday night. Everything went right for Duke. So many different things in the major scenario for the Blue Devils to get to Charlotte for the ACC Championship game had to happen. They did. Duke will play Virginia for the ACC title. Duke last played in the ACC Championship in 2013. However, they have not won the ACC since 1989. Wow.
Just absolutely wild Saturday for Duke football. I, caught the Duke game, obviously, was watching that. And I had the scenarios written down for me of what it would take to make it. But I was writing them down in the morning and was like, this is stupid. There's just no way. And then Duke wins the game. And then Miami obliterates Pitt 38-7. And even after that, I was like, there's no way. Like, there's just no way. And then I remember I was watching the end of the Iron Bowl, or not the end of it. I was watching the beginning of it, and I see Cal getting off to a bit of a run. I was like, there's just no way. So then I obviously tuned into ESPN2, watched the rest of that game. And then the fourth quarter comes around. I was like, Cal's actually going to do this. So I start pre-writing something. Then SMU comes back, and I was like, okay, it was too good to be true. And then Cal wins it. And it just made it. I immediately went on Twitter. Everyone's going off. I mean, I need Duke to win this game so bad. Not just because we want the first ACC championship to Durham since 1989, but the college football playoff discussions will be a forest fire if Duke wins the ACC championship. Heated discussion whether Duke makes it or not. I mean, 7-5 overall, 0 weeks ranked, 0 wins versus ranked opponents, losses to UConn and Tulane, and somehow, some way, Duke has made the ACC championship. The way they made it was their 8 ACC opponents had the best combined record, but a little snippet in that had a lot to do with Duke making it that most people don't know, or at least realize. Duke's game against NC State early on didn't count as a conference game. So I saw something like that on Twitter today where that
Virginia's game against NC State. Yeah.
Virginia's game against NC State didn't count against a conference game, which again put a 7-5 Duke team into the playoff. We've already seen a couple rants from Greg McElroy and Kirk Herbstreit on the ACC as a whole, specifically of this situation if Duke wins the ACC. Now we're in a position where it might happen. A lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be insane to figure out, okay, the 5 best conference champions, according to the College Football Playoff Committee rankings. You would figure James Madison at 11-1 is going to be highly up there as the team that could possibly go over Duke. But if Troy at 8-4 knocks them off, then you've got a big discussion. We assume North Texas, that American Conference champion, is going to be in the mix as well. Let's say that. You got to win the game first, right? And I think what Manny Diaz and his team are preaching after getting set for a game like this is that, look, we had Virginia at our place inside Wallace Wade Stadium, and it was embarrassing to be down 31-3 at the start of the fourth quarter. Duke made the final score look a whole lot prettier at 34-17. But what a chance, what a moment this is for guys like Darian Mensah, who hadn't been playing as well in recent weeks, to come back and remind the world this is worth the investment to get Duke in a spot like this. And you won't see a Virginia team holding on to a 31-3 lead at the start of the fourth quarter. That's what excites me, Hugh.
Yeah, I don't think he could have teed it up any better for me. Really, no better opportunity that Duke could have asked for. Not really for revenge, but just a chance to let the nation know that this team actually can do something. And I think we talked about it right after the loss. I think we used the word deflating, was that loss to Virginia, because heading into that week, Duke was the betting favorite to win the ACC. And you lose a game like that at home, you're down 31-3 at the start of the fourth quarter. I mean, there's nothing more quite honestly deflating than that. But Duke comes back, they close out the season strong with 2 straight wins, and now put himself in a position to not only just not get blown out by Virginia, but beat them and put itself in a position to have a big-time postseason game, potentially even a college football playoff experience. But Manny Diaz talked about it after the game, said he couldn't be more proud of his guys. I think it's really impressive how they finished out the season, because you don't want to assume your team's going to do that, but when it felt like they had nothing to play for, seeing them come out and really still give it everything they've got, I thought was really impressive and really inspiring. Nate Sheppard was fantastic against Wake Forest. He ran for 2 touchdowns. But I think going into that game, Duke against all odds is in this position. It's in a way a nothing to lose kind of mindset. What do they have to lose? Everybody's against them. Nobody wants Duke to win that game and have a chance at the college football playoff. Put it all out there. Their mentality has been great on the field in the final 2 weeks of the season, has been super inspiring. I'm really excited to see how they come out against a Virginia team that is obviously looking to get to the college football playoff. But I think this is a new Duke team with a new mentality and really a new sense of urgency to get some things done.
Can't wait. I misspoke just a moment ago. In that American Conference Championship game, North Texas and Tulane, not USF. My apologies there on that one. But then you've got conversations to be had about the Mountain West title game, UNLV and Boise State, and then that Sun Belt game, Troy and James Madison. Troy and Boise State, those are the teams that I think Duke fans need to be major supporters of right now, because there would be more difficult conversations about an ACC champion Duke versus James Madison or versus a 10-2 UNLV team. So I think Duke fans need to be major Boise State and Troy fans this upcoming week. So beyond that, though, you got to win the game first. 8 p.m. Eastern, Saturday night from Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. Going to be a whole lot of fun. And then also in the mind this week, Hugh, just a quick thought on this, and not asking for specifics here. We'll let that play out in the next few days. But looking at Duke football on Wednesday is National Signing Day, and everybody talking about the calendar, and that's been the big Lane Kiffin discussion of it all, leaving Ole Miss, getting to LSU, every school wanting teams to get started recruiting their players because signing day is Wednesday, and then before you know it, transfer portal will open, and you got to start to build your roster for next year. How about the major momentum going into Wednesday when Manny Diaz and his staff have been working hard, so hard out there on the recruiting trail to let guys know, look at us this year. We're competing for the ACC title. There could be some pretty significant flips going in Duke's favor come signing day on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, Duke's got money to spend. They did it last season with Darian Mensah. And, I think in a season where so many guys on this team know how much better it can get, and then seeing the end result, I think will be a major pull of getting this team back. You got Darian Mensah locked up. As long as he doesn't declare for the NFL draft, in all likelihood that will not happen because he signed a 2-year deal last year. I think number one priority, give Nate Sheppard whatever he wants. He is going to get whatever he wants if he enters the portal. Give him whatever he wants. Give it to him early. Get him back.
Let the world know Nate Sheppard is from Louisiana, and Lane Kiffin loves good running backs, and so it's not – there will be phone calls coming Nate Sheppard's way. I love that, Hugh. Duke's got to make sure to they retain him.
Yeah, I think that's priority number one. Give him whatever he wants and then build the rest of your defense around from there. Duke's going to lose some pieces like Terry Moore and Chandler Rivers. But again, just build it around. They've got some freshmen coming in, and you got a lot of time to work with the portal. It's a really awkward time, but you got a lot of time to work with it. But priority number one, get Nate Sheppard back in Durham, 100%.
Let's make it happen. Super good stuff from you as always, Hugh. I love the conversations that we have, and I know that you've been super busy with a lot of written work over at Ball Durham. Tell everybody about your website and how they can support you.
Yeah, I'm the site expert over at Ball Durham. It's BALLDURHAM.com, powered by Fansided. New content, really everything across Duke athletics every day, football, basketball, recruiting, talking about our guys in the pros, @ball_Durham on X. Super, new content every day. Appreciate you guys checking us out. And always appreciate being on here, JJ.
Big time shout out to you, Hugh. Thanks for being here. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Have a good one, man.
All right, that's Hugh Straine joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Again, a big week for Duke basketball against Florida tomorrow night, and then they take on Michigan State Saturday, noon Eastern tip-off. That's going to be a true road game for the Blue Devils, and the ACC title game on Saturday night. So morning basketball, evening football for Duke coming up on Saturday all week long. We're going to get you ready for that here on Locked On Blue Devils. Be sure to subscribe. Follow us on X at @LO_Blue Devils. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really do appreciate all of the support that's out there. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.